Hello. Police face questions over timing of arrest raid at Nicola Sturgeon's home. Well, I have to say the SNP has outdone almost anybody, almost any party in British politics in the scandals and corruption it seems to have kicked up. And I suppose we should all have realised what the future held when the SNP, after it had swept the Scottish electorate in 2015, took their seats in Westminster and behaved really very badly. In fact, they behaved like a lot of students who'd just taken over the union. Before I carry on, I'll tell you that I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. I'm also on Twitter, Gab and Parler. I let you know when I've uploaded new videos on those platforms. Please like this video, please share it, please subscribe if you're on YouTube, check you are still subscribed, that's not always a given, and you can help me financially if you want. All the links to the other platforms as well as to donation sites are in the description. Right, now let's get back to how the SNP behaved when they took their place in Westminster. They flouted seating, they burst in like a group of hyperactive teenagers, flouted seating conventions that had been in place for, well, centuries, and they actually physically displaced the 83-year-old MP for Bolsover, Dennis Skinner, who'd they were so happy about it. He'd been sitting in that very place for around 50 years whenever the Labour were on, whenever the Labour Party were on that side of the House, and that was his seat. And he was so determined to remain there, and they were so determined to oust him. They kept jostling him and sitting in his place. And can you imagine the ill manners of that, if nothing else? Anyway, Skinner took to getting up at 6 in the morning and going in there and sitting down to displace them because they didn't saunter in till a lot later. But can you imagine the heartlessness of what they were doing? And they thought they were so clever. You may have got the idea that I don't like the SNP very much. Well, the fact is, I don't. I don't like nationalist parties of any sort, generally, because they usually end up being caught out for bullying, cheating and corruption. And not particularly to my delight, the SNP turns out to be no different from all the others. You see, when you're a nationalist, your goal is some sort of nationalism, obviously, and that's a great ideal. And in the service of that, all conventions are off. All honesty can be ditched. All forms of politeness can be traduced, because whatever you're doing is in the service of a greater good, the nationalist ideal. And in this case, it seems that the rules for respect, which they flouted when they moved into the House of Commons, are proceeding into their rules for respect for their own party and for party donors who very often give money they can ill afford. And it didn't really bother them that they were misusing it. And now it's ended up with a police forensic tent on the ex-First Minister Nicola Sturgeon's lawn as they comb the house for incriminating documents to do with a missing £600,000 and a few motor vehicles. And my suspicion is it's not just £600,000 that's gone missing. Worse might be to come, by the way, because the police themselves are implicated, seeing as there are questions about why the police waited for Humza Yousaf, the protege of Nicola Sturgeon and the preferred candidate. The police seem to have waited until after Yousaf was safely installed before they began their investigation, and this is the investigation here. A husband of former First Minister held as part of an investigation into £600,000 donations to the SNP. Police chiefs in Scotland are being urged to reveal whether they faced political pressure to delay the arrest of Nicola Sturgeon's husband until after a replacement was found for the outgoing Scottish First Minister. And the question is whether a replacement that suited Nicola Sturgeon, because many people have said that Humza Yousaf is just going to end up being Sturgeon's puppet. Peter Murrell, the SNP's former chief executive, was arrested on Wednesday as part of an inquiry into the party's finances. I understand he's been released now after questioning, by the way. Police Scotland is investigating. Oh, this is all repeats. It comes 7 weeks after Miss Sturgeon announced she was stepping down as First Minister, and just 1 week after Humza Yousaf was precipitated, that's my words, precipitated into office. There have been suggestions within the SNP circles that senior party figures had learnt earlier this year that the police's investigation was coming to a head. So the question is, did they warn Nicola Sturgeon? The police said no, they didn't do it. But you know what? It's just not possible for Nicola Sturgeon not to have known. If a police chief didn't warn her, then somebody else, another SNP sympathiser within the police, would have warned her. I'm absolutely certain of that. Members of the Scottish Parliament also demanded to know whether Miss Sturgeon's decision to announce her resignation in February was prompted by any prior knowledge of an acceleration of the investigation. Mr Yousaf was asked whether it was the real reason why she'd quit. And supporters of Kate Forbes, of course, she was narrowly defeated by Mr Yousaf, said she might have won if Mr Morell's arrest had come before the leadership ballot. Of course she would have won. Anyway, you'd think that the many Scots nationalists, many of them who have this perpetual sense of historical wrongs, especially from the English, might be thinking right now of Mary Queen of Scots, who got involved with corruption, scandals, and the wrong men when she was in control of Scotland, and she ended up plotting against the English Queen who'd given her sanctuary, for which she paid the ultimate price. I wonder how Nicola, Queen of Scots, is going to end up. All right, well, that's the Scottish scandal up to now. I have to say that the SNP has really outdone the British government in almost every sort of nuttery and scandal. The hate crime bill, which was a travesty of British law, and the gender self-ID ideas, which would have thrown British legal system into total chaos, and now this. What a disaster those guys are. But as I said, we should have realised they were going to be a disaster. Well, I think I did, from the way they behaved when they came into the House of Commons that first time. You could see that they didn't know what real government was about. Okay, well, yep, till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the granniopteryx design or Grambo, with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.granniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.